The late afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm golden hue over the familiar space where I had spent countless hours. The scent of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, mixing with the faint aroma of lemon-scented cleaner that always seemed to linger in my mother's home. Cedar Creek had once felt like a fairy tale, a place where the walls of our house held the laughter and memories of family dinners, where every gathering was filled with stories shared under the soft flicker of candlelight. That was before everything changed. Family dinners had been sacred in our house, a weekly ritual that brought together my mother, my little brother, and me. We used to sit at the worn oak table, passing dishes and drawing out stories from the past while my grandfather, who always occupied the prized head seat, watched over us like a king surveying his kingdom. He would throw his head back in laughter, his silver hair glistening in the candlelight. I could almost hear him now, his voice booming. "Family comes first, Mia, remember that." His words echoed in my mind as I stood there in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, feeling utterly lost. I had professed to live my life by those words, to always prioritize family over everything else. But the laughter had faded along with him. After he passed, something began to shift in my mother. She had always been the glue that held us together, but suddenly it felt like she was fraying at the edges. The busy evenings of preparing meals and sharing laughs morphed into awkward silences and neglected phone calls. My brother had been too young to grasp the marital distance our parents created, while I had tried to fill the gaps, but an unsettling feeling churned in my gut, the unmistakable sensation that something was amiss. The turning point came entirely by accident when I happened to overhear a conversation outside the closed door of my mother's bedroom, where she often retreated to avoid whatever burden weighed on her. I had been searching for my brother's favorite video game, which seemed to have vanished into thin air. As I neared the door, faint voices drew me closer, curiosity piquing as I pressed my ear against the cool wood. "Of course, I deserve it. I worked hard for that money," my mother's voice carried through the door, unmistakably laced with an unusual sharpness. I thought back to my grandfather's legacy, the house he worked tirelessly to pay off, the small farm that spanned the back, and every little piece he had entrusted her to preserve for the family. A million thoughts raced through my head, the most prominent being what exactly she had been working hard for. "Can you believe it? $100,000, she continued, and my heart sank as if it had dropped into a deep abyss. The number echoed in my mind. $100,000. Those words hung heavy like lead in the air, the heat crawling up my cheeks as the walls began to close in. I had always thought we were connected, bound by the same values we had preached through our very veins. "What about Mia and Danny?" I heard another voice, an unfamiliar one, respond. I imagined the cold, hard edge of my mother's face as the bright colors of her earlier kindness dimmed. "Those two can take care of themselves. I've done enough for them. It's my time to enjoy what I have," she snapped back. There was a moment of silence that followed, thick and suffocating, each breath feeling like a betrayal of its own. This was not the woman I had admired through my childhood, the mother who held my hand through every scare and cried with me at every heartbreak. This new version of her was like a stranger, someone who could stash away a fortune while we wrestled with bills, late-night anxieties, and the dark hole of an empty refrigerator. The warmth of my memories turned to ice as her words dissected the reality of our family fabric, fraying at every thread. I stumbled back from the door, my mind racing as I felt anger bubble beneath the surface. I stormed into the living room where my little brother sat cross-legged on the floor, completely engaged in one of his games. His innocent laughter rang hollow in the tense atmosphere that pressed down on my chest. Sinking to the couch, I buried my face in my hands, my heart a storm of emotions, betrayal, anger, and an unfamiliar sense of isolation as the realization sunk in. We were not a family, at least not anymore. "Hey Mia, can you help me with this?" Danny's bright voice pulled me from the depths of my spiraling thoughts. The innocence in his tone shattered my internal chaos, drawing me back to responsibility. I felt every ounce of my protection instincts rise, making me yearn to shield him from the harsh realities I had just uncovered. "Sure, buddy," I replied, trying to force a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. As I leaned over to help him with his game, I found that I barely registered the movements of buttons being pressed and sounds blaring from the television. All I could think about was how far we had fallen. "What's wrong with you?" "You look sad," he remarked plainly, peering up at me with wide eyes. This kid had a knack for reading emotions, and I debated whether to shroud the truth or spill it all over him like spilled ink. "It's nothing, I'm not feeling great," I fibbed, and he shrugged, completely accepting my answer. I felt terrible for lying. He deserved the truth, but at the same time I couldn't bear to let him in on our mother's deception or the weight of the situation looming over us. "Can we order pizza like we used to?" he asked, his eyes sparkling at the memory of chubby-cheeked pizza parties where the flavor of grease and melted cheese danced with our laughter. "You can get your favorite toppings." I chuckled softly, recalling the countless times we had dived into those pizza boxes, delighting in every flavor. "Yeah, we can order pizza," I said, attempting to brighten the mood. As I grabbed my phone and dialed the number, my mind kept drifting back to the conversation I had eavesdropped on. $100,000 just sitting somewhere while we worked hard for every dime. My mother's laughter and merriment echoed in my ears like a bitter syrup, sickening and sweet. After placing our order, my mind wandered, plotting and scheming back and forth, trying to envision what life would be like if I confronted her. What would I say? How could someone so devoted to family lie so deeply yet remain undetected? Mia Pizza S here. Danny's joyous shout yanked me from my thoughts, and I felt a momentary flash of domestic bliss. The simple pleasure of pizza and my brother's innocent delight brought a brief sense of comfort. The doorbell rang, and the familiar pizza delivery guy, always cheerful and bright-eyed, stood there with our order. "Looks like a party," he grinned. "Just the two of us," I replied, trying my best to mirror his good mood as I took the box from his hands. As I turned and closed the door behind me, a sense of finality settled in. The laughter of the pizza night was short-lived. We feasted and joked with each other, but in the back of my mind, images of my mother's betrayal lingered like shadows refusing to leave. After dinner, as Danny ambled off to his room, sleepy and content, a foreboding heaviness washed over me. I found myself pacing the hallway, making my way to my mother's door once again, a surge of nervous energy coursing through me. I knocked lightly, my heart racing as I fought through thoughts of my brother, my grandfather, and the endless love that was tarnished by greed. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open. "Mom," I called softly, expecting her to be reclining on her bed, perhaps skimming through a magazine or daydreaming. My breath caught when I found her staring blankly at her phone, her expression one of a world cast in shadows. "Mia, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice hollow, aware that my entrance was not just casual curiosity. "Can we talk?" I asked, the words tasting bitter on my tongue but bubbling up like fresh bile. "Is this about Danny? He is fine, you know, you do not need to worry so much." "Mom, it's not about him." My heart pounded as I approached, shifting on my feet, summoning the words I needed. "I overheard you talking about the money." Instantly, her body tensed, and the walls around us seemed thicker, weighted down by the tension. She had always been good at hiding things. "What do you mean? The $100,000? My voice was steadier than I felt. "That you have tucked away while we struggle. You are enjoying luxurious vacations while we barely scrape by. What kind of family puts greed above everything else?" For a moment her gaze faltered, and I saw a flicker of humanity seep through her cold exterior, but it vanished just as quickly. "Mia, you do not understand the pressures I am under. I have earned that. I thought you would support me, not question my choices. How can you call this family? Support you, by withholding what is rightfully ours? Where has the love gone?" I felt the weight of my grandfather's wisdom and strangely the instinct to fight surging within me. "Life isn't fair," she exclaimed, her voice laced with rising agitation. "You don't get to dictate how I live mine, yet you expect me to continue acting like this is normal." She crossed her arms, her brows furrowing, and I felt a piece of my perception of her shatter. The mother I had loved had become a fortress built from resentment and denial, cemented with greed. "Mia, go back to your room," she ordered coolly, signaling the end of our conversation. With every heartbeat, I felt more resolute. Denial was not going to suffocate my family's legacy any longer. I turned to leave, but not before glancing back one last time, swallowing down the lump of betrayal lodged in my throat. I needed a plan. The confidence flickered like a little flame beneath the weight of righteous anger. If she could live in secrecy, I could orchestrate a counter-strategy of my own. The feeling of betrayal sliced through me stronger than ever, a thorny vine wrapping around my heart. But deep within, I felt vengeance blooming, and the taste of resolve invigorated my spirit as I walked away, fully intent on claiming not just my inheritance, but my family. When all was said and done, the day I decided to confront my mother about the inheritance felt heavy, like the world knew a storm was brewing and was holding its breath. I could sense it when I shared my plan with my brother. His eyes flickered with the same mix of resolve and fear that twisted in my stomach. We had both suffered the quiet aches of being overshadowed, our voices drowned out beneath the weight of our mother's extravagant life and relentless ambition. We were tired of pretending that everything was fine. The invitation we had never received, the missed opportunities, the love that seemed conditional, today we would ask her about all of it. That morning, I dressed carefully, trying to ready myself for whatever may happen. I wore the pale blue sweater my brother had gifted me on my last birthday, a color that always seemed to spark memories of laughter and warmth during the chill of winter. In the mirror, my reflection looked almost determined. However, the weight of the confrontation loomed above me like dark clouds rolling in. As we stepped into her house, the familiar scents enveloped us. Freshly baked bread layered with rich, buttery aromas and a hint of something floral from the vase on the kitchen counter. My heart sank, knowing the contrasts of warmth and tension that filled these familiar walls. I could already hear the faint hum of the television in the other room, the joyous screams echoing from a reality show that had garnered the family's affection more than I ever could. "Just like always," I muttered under my breath, prompting a faint glance from my brother. "Are you ready for this?" he whispered, a nervous glance flickering across his face. I nodded, firming my resolve. "We can't keep pretending," I replied, taking a deep breath, tasting the bittersweet air of nostalgia mixed with the anxiety of what lay ahead. "Let's just get this over with." The living room was bathed in an unnatural brightness from the overhead lights, casting shadows in all directions. My mother sat on the plush couch, scrolling through her phone, expertly balancing her poise in the way she commanded a room. Her hair, meticulously styled, shone like an impenetrable barrier. I swallowed hard. She was the queen of her domain, comfortably engrossed in a world that always seemed so distant from ours. Mom, I started, my voice shaking slightly. Can we talk? She looked up, a lazy smile creeping across her face as if we were merely interrupting her leisure time. Of course, dear, what is it? You two shouldn't be so serious in the middle of the day, she replied, a mock concern layering her playful tone. And in that moment, I saw the wall that separated us. We want to talk about the inheritance, my brother said, his voice firmer than mine, but there was a catch. I could hear it. The way his words hung in the air, seeking approval or maybe even validation from her that felt futile before it began, she laughed, a sound that echoed through the room like a sudden clap of thunder slicing through the tension. Oh, honey, you both worry too much. You think I'm going to give everything away. You should know me better than that. Her laughter became offensive to my ears, each chuckle dismissing our concerns like items on a grocery list she would never buy. I felt myself shrinking, the walls closing in ever so slightly. Mom, we are not worried. We just want to know why we were left out and why you never included us in anything, I pressed, the words spilling out like an overfilled container. You can't keep avoiding this conversation. It's affecting both of us. Her expression shifted, darkness shadowing her eyes, mirroring a sudden gust of wind that chilled the summer heat. You think I'm avoiding? You two have always been assuming. You want what you believe is owed to you, but you will never understand the burden of managing the family estate. I have worked my entire life for this. I deserve to enjoy it. Each word dripped with venom. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the unfairness igniting embers deep inside me. I never said it was easy, Mom. Please don't act like we're selfish for wanting to understand. We simply want a clear picture, my brother insisted, steeling himself, pulling me along through the rising storm. You could have brought us into the conversation, he added with a hint of desperation lingering beneath his courage. Into the conversation about what? Handing down the spoils to the ungrateful. You think this is a game? She rose from the couch, her cold voice cutting through the air, creating an icy barrier between us and the warmth of family we had so desperately sought. You are not ready to understand what it takes to truly run a legacy. Selfishness is not a legacy, I shouted, the words escaping before I could hold them back. You act as if everything you do is for us, but really it's for your image, your stature. Enough, she screamed, her eyes blazing. You have no idea what it costs to keep up appearances and maintain my reputation. You two expect me to hand over the keys because you believe it belongs to you. I could see the anger morph her face. Well, you are wrong. The world doesn't give anyone anything for free. There you go again. Do you even hear yourself? This isn't about money. It is about family, about acknowledging that we exist. My voice wavered, brimming with desperation. I felt the heat of tears burning behind my eyelids. For a brief moment, the air hung heavy with silence, a bittersweet lull before the tempest returned. Family, she repeated with a mocking lilt. You think you can shout at me and demand space in this family when you haven't even proven that you deserve it. Now it was my brother's turn to raise his voice, drowning out the mingling emotions. We deserve more than just your breadcrumbs, Mom. We existed in your shadows long enough. Do you even care about us at all? For a moment, disbelief danced across her features. Then she sneered, a cruel smile twisting her lips. Care, what is it that I owe you just for being born? Let me remind you, this is my estate. If you want anything, you should come prepared to earn it. With every scathing word she uttered, I felt a shard of betrayal knife through me, sharper than any wound. I could see my brother's expression contort in disbelief, his eyes wide and hurt. She had taken our pain and twisted it, woven it into a weapon against us. And yet we stood there, fading into shadows of our own design. I cannot believe you, I gasped, the realization stinging sharper than any confrontation ever could. Furious with the way she managed to make us feel small, I could feel my fists clenching involuntarily. You have manipulated every situation, and now you are turning the rest of the family against us so you can keep your delusions intact. I think you both need to take a step back. The words were heavy, a barren shadow of reality. This family's future is not your playground, she declared, her voice oozing condescension like a fresh wound being opened all over again. When I call a meeting to discuss the estate distribution, you will learn your place. I felt a knot forming in the pit of my stomach, a sickening realization striking my heart. A family meeting, designed specifically to rip us apart. Then it's a trap, isn't it? My brother whispered, the challenge sinking deep into his voice. Let me handle the family business as I see fit, she countered dismissively, waving us off as if we were insects buzzing around her. You will both look greedy, desperate for something you have never earned. An overwhelming tide of shame washed over me, almost drowning the last remnants of hope I clung to. It's not true. We won't allow anyone to turn us against each other, I pleaded, feeling the sting of defeat creeping into my thoughts. The chime of the clock on the wall sounded like a slamming door. We were caught in a moment that felt suspended in time, our futures all but eclipsed by the weight of her ambition. You don't have a choice, she retorted, a cruel glint in her eyes. You're at the mercy of the family, they won't see you any differently. You are merely the children wanting the mother to pay for her love. I could feel the rage boiling up inside me. It blended seamlessly with despair, craving a path forward. You will regret this, I blurted out, lacking any clear idea of what I would truly do next. You cannot wipe us away from the family portrait with a charming smile and a manipulative story. She let out a low, mocking laugh as if I had told her a joke. Regret from someone like me? You have no idea how far I will go to protect my legacy. The weight of her words settled deep within me like a boulder on my chest. It was like she had set us alight, igniting something dormant that had been waiting to explode. and as we stood within that room, the fight only seemed to escalate. I knew the meeting would become a battleground, our family divided by her lies and schemes, showcasing a performance that had been carefully scripted in her favor. I cast a glance at my brother, a silent agreement forged in the stares exchanged between us. Our mother had underestimated our unity, and while we felt small today, there would be a time to reclaim our story. As we walked out, hearts heavy but woven together by this shared experience, the anger pulsing through my veins felt almost electric. I had felt powerless, but I would not allow her to define us. We were wounded but not broken. Her laughter would become the echo of motivation that shaped our revenge. We would find a way to dig deep, uprooting those lies as we navigated through the chaos she had spun, finding strength not only in the pain, but in the unity that now ignited our path forward. The culmination of my anger and betrayal arrived violently at the meeting, when my mother, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my entire bank account, casually threw out a derisive comment about my financial struggles. I could still hear her voice ringing in my ears, like a struck bell tolling for my downfall. "Honestly, Mia, how do you still not have a stable job? It's almost embarrassing," she'd said, her voice dripping with disdain as she rifled through her designer handbag. The words felt like a slap in the face, an icy shock that shot through my spine. Heat rushed to my cheeks, boiling over with rage. I clenched my fists so tightly that I could feel my fingernails digging into my palms, desperate to keep my composure. The meeting room was not the place for an outburst, but everything inside me screamed for release. How could she stand there, my own mother, adorned in her lavish attire, mocking my worth as a person? I had worked harder than anyone knew, navigating a maze of bills, debt, and endless rejections. I had sacrificed my dreams, my stability, and even parts of my identity just to stay afloat, and there she was, perched like a queen on her throne of privilege, throwing daggers that cut deeper than any financial crisis I faced. I glanced around the room, half expecting everyone else to recoil in shock at her cruel words, but nothing disturbed the atmosphere but the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. Their ambient glow seemed to intensify the resentment, highlighting the warmth of embarrassment creeping through me. "Can you try and be a little more supportive?" I wanted to shout, but instead I held my breath, counting the seconds until I could escape. I glanced at the other attendees, her friends and business associates, as they whispered to one another, but none appeared willing to challenge her. They nodded in agreement with everything she said, the flattering echoes reinforcing the illusions she had crafted around her, illusions that had nearly suffocated my spirit. The truth weighed heavy on my heart, a leaden ball that dragged down my already dim mood. In that bleak meeting room, surrounded by so much wealth, I felt inferior. Something snapped inside. I could not let this continue. I could not stand idly by, watching her ruin everything our grandfather had worked for with her greed and selfishness. My grandfather, the man who had taught me integrity and hard work, would roll over in his grave if he could see this. Imagining the disappointment in his wise, kind eyes spurred me on. It was time to take matters into my own hands. After the meeting, while they chatted idly, delighting in the snobby conversations about new investments and fancy vacations, I slipped away. "Excuse me," murmured under my breath. I needed to find the papers that outlined the inheritance allocations. My heart raced with a mix of dread and excitement as I slid through the long, polished hallways of our family estate. The walls were adorned with framed photographs of family gatherings, smiles reflecting nostalgia and warmth, while I hid behind a mask of anger and betrayal. "She has no idea what she has done," I muttered to myself, glancing at a portrait of my grandfather. His eyes, forever watching over our family, felt like they were glaring at her from the frame. I quickened my pace, my determination tightening like a spring loaded with fury. The library, once my favorite sanctuary as a child, now felt like a battlefield. Dust motes danced in the slanting evening light as I flicked on the lamp beside a large oak table. The air was heavy with the scent of old books and polished wood, a comfort I desperately clung to as I dove into the sea of documents lined up neatly on shelves. The shelves reached from the floor to the ceiling, packed with books on everything from art history to business management, but I had my eyes set on the thin manila folders containing the details of the family's financial legacy. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled each one out, rifling through papers dated decades ago. Every word I skimmed through was a reminder of the trust our grandfather placed in us, in her, to preserve and cultivate our family's legacy. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I finally spotted it, a plain, dull file that seemed innocuous enough. But when I pulled it out, the weight of its significance made my heartbeat quicken. I took it to the table, sitting down hard on the leather chair that creaked beneath me. My heart raced as I opened the folder, a flurry of anger swirling violently into a focused storm. There it was, everything neatly outlined, who inherited what and on what terms. My eyes widened, taking in each line, each name. Everything felt surreal, like I was in a dream I couldn't wake from. "She has no idea," I whispered to myself, staring at her name highlighted next to a fat allocation, the amount seeming to compound my bitterness. "Can you believe this?" I exclaimed to the empty room, clutching the documents to my chest. "While I'm out here scraping by, she lives like a queen, swimming in her designer clothes like they were awarded for some kind of merit." With every word I spoke, bitterness spilled out of me like hot lava, threatening to consume everything in my path. I was aware that anger could be a slippery slope, but this felt different. This felt empowering. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I was going to confront her, show her the truth behind her gilded illusion, and finally make her understand just how low she had stooped to look down on me. Standing up abruptly, I nearly knocked over the chair in my haste, excitement coursing through me alongside my anger. Every detail of the plan formed in my mind as I envisioned how to unleash this storm. I imagined her face, the disbelief and confusion mingling with anger. It filled me with a sense of exhilarating anticipation. In my heart, I knew I had to be strategic. I wasn't going to confront her in a moment of fury. No, I needed to wait for the perfect time, to choose my words carefully like a maestro leading an orchestra. And I needed proof, my grandfather's legacy secured in writing, that could shatter her illusions once and for all. As I left the library, clutching the file to my chest, another wave of determination washed over me. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about everything my grandfather had believed in. I felt a little lighter but stronger, my purpose invigorated. I was ready. I could not let her continue to manipulate and mock the foundation he'd built. The duel of wits had begun, and I was armed. My mother was preparing a lavish dinner that evening, an extravagant display of everything I lacked. As the aroma of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, I couldn't help but recognize the irony. It felt like she was taunting me, reminding me of the gap between her world and mine. But I was armed with knowledge now, and every time I felt the pangs of hunger remind me of my struggles, it fueled me instead. "Dinner's ready," she called out, her voice loud and clear, echoing off the walls like trumpet fanfare. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach, anticipation intermingling with simmering resentment. If there was any time to speak, it would be now, with the family around, just like I had envisioned earlier. As I entered the dining room, I could see her smiling at my father, animatedly recounting tales of her latest shopping spree. "You simply must see this new boutique in town. The clothes are to die for." She fluttered her eyelashes, as if this life of excess was the only one that mattered. "Sounds great, honey," my father replied, his eyes glazed over as he absent-mindedly pushed food around his plate, clearly not engaged. Their conversation was unbearable, a ballet of oblivion dancing around me. I could feel the gravity of the moment drawing closer, each second a reminder that I was not there to indulge in their gluttony. "Can I say something?" I said, a little louder than I intended, startling them from their shallow reverie. "Of course, dear," my mother replied, fixing me with a casual yet condescending smile. "What is it? I hope it is not something boring like your finances." "Actually, speaking of finances," I said, my voice steady despite the tumult in my chest, "I found something today, something very interesting in the library." Her smile faltered for just a moment, and I reveled in the satisfaction that poured through me. "Interesting?" she echoed, feigning nonchalance, but her eyes flickered with an unease that did not go unnoticed. "Yes, the inheritance allocations," I replied, watching her bristle, a slight tightening of her mouth, the way her perfectly manicured fingers curled around her wine glass a little more tightly, as if bracing for impact. "I think it's about time we discuss how everything is being divided." Silence fell heavy around the table, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I saw her facade start to crumble, the polished surface reflecting a reality she had kept hidden for so long. Pieces were falling into place in the grand design I was about to unfold, and with immense satisfaction I took a breath, knowing I was finally in control. The battle had begun, and I was ready to fight. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that." As my mother stood in front of a family that once adored her, the room seemed to vibrate with the intensity of emotions swirling like a storm cloud ready to burst. The entire family gathered in the old, oak-paneled living room, once filled with laughter and warmth, now heavy with tension. I could hardly believe the scene was unfolding beneath the grand chandelier, which cast a glimmering light over the chaos that was about to ensue. My mother's carefully constructed facade, the polished mask she had worn for years, started to crack. A tremor in her voice when she saw the letters I had unearthed, the financial statements I laid out like a deck of cards turned against her, signaled the beginning of her unraveling. "Mia, please, this is not what it looks like," she insisted, her voice shaking, cracking like dry glass under pressure. It was an attempt at pleading, an echo of desperation laced with a thin veneer of her usual bravado. But I was resolute, and I watched in silent rapture as the truth pierced her lies. "Mom, you can't deny it anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though vibrant emotions fluttered inside me like trapped butterflies. "There is evidence here that you have been deceiving us all." I gestured toward the pile of documents, reports from lawyers, bank statements, and the notarized will mercilessly displayed before her. Each piece of paper was a dagger, and she was the intended target. As the reality weighed upon her, her expression transformed. The defiance faded away, and I could see it, the guilt, the shame, the unmistakable acknowledgement of her wrongdoings. I did what I thought was best for our future," she stammered, her hands trembling at her sides, unsure of whether to defend herself or to shield herself from the inevitable fallout. "I only wanted to protect the family." "Protecting us," my uncle's voice boomed, cutting through the silence like thunder. His face turned a vivid shade of crimson, his brows knitted together with outrage. "You have betrayed us. This was supposed to be a family legacy, not your personal piggy bank." His words were like a slap in the face, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Heads turned and whispers filled the air, accusations spiraling around like leaves caught in a whirlwind. But I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything, my mother replied, her pleas sounding hollow against the weight of her deceit. There was a tremor in her words, a desperation for understanding that was utterly lost on us. I thought if I kept the money, I could keep us safe. Safe? You thought hoarding everything for yourself was safety. I could no longer contain my fury, the years of feeling overshadowed finally spilling out like floodwaters. What about us, your children? What about the trust we thought we had in you? You were supposed to guide us, not steal from us and manipulate us. In that moment, standing among my family, the sheer weight of betrayal was suffocating us. I scanned the room, our relatives' faces were filled with varying degrees of disbelief and hurt. I could even see my brother in the corner, struggling to maintain his composure as he wrestled with the reality of how deeply our mother had wounded us. My heart ached for him too, as I could see tears trickling down his cheeks like tiny rivers of sorrow. Mom, you have to face the truth, he said, finally breaking his silence as the tension became unbearable. His voice was trembling but strong. You promised to give us a better life, yet you lied to us all along. You manipulated us simply to stay on top. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she croaked, her voice cracking, the glamour of her past collapsing around like a haunted house after a long winter. I thought I was protecting you both, but I see now that I was just making things worse. Her once strong demeanor dissolved into a fog of shame, the pristine edges of her self-image crumbling. Worse, you made it impossible for us to trust you, don't you get that? I shot back, feeling the surge of adrenaline flowing as I continued to confront her. You erased our family bond for the sake of money. It was never about us, it was always about your desperation. In the depths of her despair, I saw her shoulders slump beneath the weight of her misdeeds. The silence was deafening, the only sounds being the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel and the muffled sobs from my brother. I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation washing over me. The dark cloud that had lingered over our family for so long was lifting and the sun was beginning to shine through. I want you to realize what you have lost, I said softly, letting vulnerability seep into my voice. I took a cautious step toward her and caught her gaze, noticing how her eyes glistened with unshed tears and the remnants of her power slipped away like grains of sand. We will not be broken by your greed. You've lost our respect, Mom, but you still have a chance to make amends. Start by being honest with yourself and with us. The words hung in the air like a dense fog. For the first time, I watched as she grappled with her truth. The emotional chaos that ensued left her reputation in ruins, dismantled brick by brick until nothing remained but the skeleton of a woman who was once revered. The family's silence was palpable, a collective gasp of shock and horror hanging over us, the unspoken question lingering, what would happen next? From now on we rebuild, I declared, my voice resounding with conviction, even as my heart fluttered with uncertainty. We deserve our rightful share of the inheritance, and we will use it to claim back what is ours. But that cannot happen until you, I hesitated, feeling the weight of my own desire for justice pressing down upon my shoulders. You have to fully own the pain you have caused. We need the truth, and you owe us that much. I'll help you, my uncle interjected brusquely, the fury still clawing at his throat. We'll bring this to light properly. You can help facilitate the reallocation, the transparency that should have always existed. You think hoarding all this was protection? No, it was a betrayal, plain and simple. My mother hung her head, every word feeling like a sharp knife, a tether to the past that had finally come undone. I can't bear it, I was wrong, she murmured, barely above a whisper. I thought I was guarding our family's legacy. I never meant to hurt anyone, but I see how naive I was. I created my own prison. And in that moment of confession, her composure finally shattered. The room, filled with once celebrated smiles, now wore frowns of disappointment. I felt both despair for what had been lost and exhilaration knowing that I had taken a stand. The ball was rolling forward, and I could see a burgeoning strength forming around my brother and me, banding together in the face of our mother's failures. Suddenly, feeling the need to bridge the unsettling silence, my brother stepped closer to my mother, his eyes filled with tears yet softened by understanding. Mom, he said, his voice dipping low, this is going to take time to heal, but you need to take responsibility for the hurt you've caused. We will talk through this, but you must be open with us. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I grasped the weight of this moment. I felt my brother's arms wrap around me tightly, warmth seeping through the cracks created by our mother's betrayal. I returned his embrace fiercely, surrendering to the overwhelming emotions swirling around us. Tears of relief streamed down our faces like the rain that washes away dirt, cleansing us of the burdens we had carried for too long. Standing there, I finally felt free from her shadow, liberated from the weight of the lies she had spun around us for years. My mother's grand lifestyle, the illusions of wealth and control, crumbled before our very eyes. I turned to face my family, seeing so many shared emotions reflected back at me, confusion, anger, but also glimmers of hope. As the atmosphere shifted, I recognized not only what we had uncovered but also what we had regained, the strength of unity, the solidarity of honesty, and the atmosphere of shared grief and understanding. The exchanges of glances across the room echoed the urgency of what lay ahead. I had not only exposed her greed but kindled a fire of determination among us, allowing us to reclaim our family honor step by step with honesty at its core. Together, I whispered to my brother, squeezing his hand in a silent vow of commitment to repair what had been shattered. We will rebuild together. And with that promise, I felt the surge of hope rising within me. Precious seeds sprouting from the ashes of our pain, blossoming into a future where trust could be reforged, where we could craft a new legacy that reflected our true values as a family. I had endured the pain of betrayal, but now from the ashes of deceit I was stronger. The satisfaction of taking back our power, the sweetest fruit of all, rippled through me, far more beautiful than any hollow luxury my mother had ever enjoyed.